Leeds on the offensive straight away. Jack Harrison here. Jack Harrison bringing the ball forward. He's played it into Pablo Hernandez, edge of the area. Hernandez goes for goal! What a start to the game! 17 seconds on the clock. It's got to be one of the quickest goals of the Sky Bet Championship season. Here's Cook. Cook goes for goal! And finds the back of the net in sensational fashion.
Jones now for Leeds. And McNabb only half stopping him. Jones getting it across. And Clark going in! And Alan Clark has put Leeds ahead! Down under. Mark Viduka is a sporting god in Australia, and now in West Yorkshire. Here he is again. It's Viduka. It's four. It's all his own work.
Well, hello everybody. I hope you're doing fantastically well. My name is Conor McGilligan. This is your Monday Musings. What's going on, everybody? Great to see you in here. Now, listen, just a little bit of a heads up and a little bit of an apology for me. I think it is still coming in, which is great. But just so you know, there's been loads of stuff that's gone down over the last 24 hours when it comes to certain networks, certain internet providers, of which is slightly problematic. And unfortunately, it has hit our graphics card, which is why you can't see anything here or anything here or probably anything up here, actually. So we're going old school. We're going old school. Annoyingly, that means I can't flash your comments up. I mean, keep getting your comments in and I will read them. Obviously, off the top chat, I can see them here, but I can't flag them up, which is a nightmare. Basically, systems have been affected all across the world as of right now, and unfortunately, one of our data providers is exactly one of those who's struggling at this moment in time. I got a message this morning, so apologies for that. But we move, we still keep going. Richard Anthony Wick says, "Morning, Connor. How you, mate? How's it going? Good to see you in here." Jay's here as well. James Kent, hello. Morning, all, and morning, Connor. Daniel Ito says, "Farke ball is racking up stats with no productive output." Let's have a look at what you guys are saying as well. Jamie says, "Everyone blaming Strout for that second goal are a joke. Ampadu's out of position, making a back five when zero danger if he was in line with the rest of the midfield. Indeed. Ultimately, I'm struggling to come up with a manager we can attract with the squad that we have." Blessings, Connor, and one Leadsers. Ian Brown says, "Mind the 6-point gap, Connor." Thank you for that. Lee says as well, "I wanted Farke out after promotion. He's not good enough for the Prem. 49ers put it out and they are thinking of replacing Farke. Fans made it clear they want him to stay. Big mistake, 49ers." Raleigh St. Clair says, "Playing better players in the Farke Premier League system would have several more points, and we have some that he won't play, etc., etc." Yeah, and guys, get your thoughts in the comment section below. I want this to be a little bit more Monday Musings. I thought we could do a rumour mill this morning, but then I thought to myself, I feel people are still angry and I feel people are still annoyed at the weekend and talking about, the news in and around Ellen Road when it comes to maybe Hannibal's police investigation, which is going on in the background, and talking about maybe January people who we need to target isn't probably me putting the correct measure on what's going on with the one Leadsers today. There's been a lot of comments, and we're going to flag a couple of the comments up, and this is why I've put on the title "Fans Are Fed Up," because you're listening to some of and reading some of these comments as well on the network at this moment in time on my videos, and people are getting a little bit annoyed. People are narked off at this moment in time, and I completely understand why. There was a sort of hammer blow reaction really from the weekend's antics. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the hard line out last night. I had some personal problems, which wasn't great. But yeah, ended up in A&E last night. Wasn't me, thank goodness, but it was obviously my partner. So yeah, it was hard line couldn't happen last night. So sorry guys, and I couldn't update you either because look, we didn't have any Wi-Fi situation at the hospital, etc., etc. So apologies for that. But I wanted to get into what is going on at Leeds at this moment in time. Is everybody being overreactionary? Are we putting our complete blame on Daniel Farke? Is that fair? Is it right to put the balancing act on everybody at this moment in time? And we are still outside the relegation zone. It was a must not lose at the weekend. That's what it felt like to me. I know a lot of you guys are the exact same. It felt like a must not lose. I felt it was a must win. And I mentioned this several times, but it's a little bit more on the pulse of because I targeted Leeds. Leeds need to get 10 wins this season. Burnley away would have been one of those for me. And if Burnley away isn't one of those, then we've kind of got to look at where we are right now. We've kind of got to look at where we are right now, and we've got to pick up that win from somewhere else. So we don't want to go across sort of old ground again. We want to look at solutions going forward. What can Leeds United do going into that West Ham United game? How can Daniel Farke sort this? And, you look at the squads right now and going into that Burnley game, I'll be brutally honest with you guys, and you'll see in the video we did yesterday, the ups and downs and the instant match reaction, I felt that Leeds United squad was still good enough to beat Burnley. We didn't end up beating Burnley. And I think it was because Daniel Farke just almost has this stubbornness where he kind of wants to be proven right with certain selection. That's how I feel. And I don't know. I guess there is a notion that he doesn't want to change to 3 at the back. I think maybe he might be forced to do that at some stage in the Premier League. And the reason I'm saying that is because Leeds United have invested heavily in the back line. And when I talk about the back line, I mean that defensive rear guard. And then I mean the midfield. You've not done the utmost going forward when you're buying players with a high level of maybe experience at the top level, high caliber. And proof of top level security really when you brought them in. You have that understanding that they are going to prove it. Leeds haven't really done that. So there's a lot of context to be brought into the conversation today. So let me know your thoughts, everybody. And yeah, as I said, I think a lot of this is what can Daniel Farke do going forward, which is effectively going to save his bacon, because Leeds are looking at a scenario right now where in our next sort of 2 games, you're looking at West Ham, you're looking at Forest in particular, because I think Brighton and some other games in and around that point are going to be very difficult for Leeds to be able to compete with, just in terms of the caliber of players. And that's not because of shoddy recruitment. I think that is because of some of the teams that we're playing are just far superior to Leeds United. So they need to have an off day, i.e., your Newcastles and your Everton, and Leeds need to have a very, very good day. But I do think there's a way, and this is why I've got solutions in the title. I think there's a way of which Daniel Farke can work around this to be able to get the most profitable return for Leeds United. And I have to stress as well, everybody, and sometimes you kind of have to do this a lot. I think we can all look at this and we can all assess it in a very intelligent, methodical way. I want to do that. I want it to be respectful as well. Unfortunately, there are some communities that don't welcome all opinions. I do welcome all opinions, as long as they're respectful, as long as they, don't, boil over. And we can have a little chat about it over here. We want to promote discourse, debate, and discussion, really. And obviously, I want a variety of opinions, whether or not you agree with me, you disagree with me. And that's the beauty of football. 10 people go down to a pub. I was down at the pub on Saturday evening with 8 or 9 of my mates. 2 or 3 people having some outlandish opinions. We all took the mickey out of them. That's football. That's life. Just don't get what I really, really strongly advise people to do in these times where it can be very, very passionate, is to not get into heated arguments and to not get upset and to not, get downtrodden with stuff like that. That's what I would suggest. And just open that discussion, because sometimes you can learn something, and me as well. Let's have a look. Cool Media Marketing says awful. Better in a Sunday League side. Parker out, managed Farke. We need to be more clinical up top. Switch to a 4-4-2 and have Metcha and DCL up top using a false 9. Yeah, and this is what a lot of people have been speaking about in my comment section. It's very much circled around maybe Farke not being able to switch it up and go to a 2. I think at the weekend, we mentioned it in the preview, that Leeds would have been able to orchestrate proceedings a lot easier with Tanaka in there. But there's no point in going on about that weekend. We all thought that that squad was good enough, or some of us anyway, thought that that squad was good enough up against Burnley. That is the context. You're up against Burnley. They're bringing Ashley Barnes off the bench. We still have Peru off the bench. We have Biol off the bench. We have, Tanaka off the bench. They're not bringing world-class superstars off the bench. And that's why Leeds United, as much as we were okay, we still created chances. We still conjured scenarios of which, we could have really put the ball in the back of the net. But ultimately, I don't care. Leeds are so far gone on this XG sheet now, but we are not able to really put the ball into the back of the net when you look at it. And we are conceding goals now. We are conceding, what is it, an average of 2 goals per game now. That has to stop. We've seen this in the Premier League before where that flow hasn't been stopped and Leeds United have turned into the whipping boys. So at both ends, it needs to be solved. And you'll say to me, Connor, well, that's recruitment. And you're absolutely bang on. And this is why they don't get out of it. They don't get out of it whatsoever. I think the recruitment up top hasn't been great. I think it's been poor. I think when the manager has come out and said that he wants X, Y, and Z players in for a certain time, you go and get that manager X, Y, and Z player for a certain amount, in a certain amount of time. We had 2 days left of the window. It felt like Leeds United could have done that or saved money on maybe a Yakabil if you're never going to play him, and then invest that somewhere else. But it feels like Leeds' strength right now is from a defensive perspective. And what I mean there is the defense in the midfield. Daniel Farke's got to work around that. If we've not got any wingers available on Friday, work around that. You've got to, that's where you earn your coin as a Premier League manager. And I feel like there was ways to do that against Burnley. I've mentioned before, I thought you could have gone to a 3 at the back. I think a 3-4-1-2 would have been perfect. I think that would have worked with maybe Tanaka in that hole, that advanced role, pull Stack a little bit back in that number 6, play 2 up top. Why not? With the greatest respect, you're going up against Burnley. Let's try and test some things. And is it the scenario to try and test some things? I think so. Yeah, I do. I really do think that. And I think when we can all see what's going to happen. We all know what's going to happen against Burnley when you've got Jack Harrison and Brendan Aronson on the football pitch and they're both playing out wide. We all know what's going to happen. But we all can predict as well how Leeds are going to start. That's not good enough, because if we can predict it, other managers can predict it as well. And Scott Parker adjusted his shape in alliance with that, which just is not good enough. We needed to see more. We need to see halftime changes. And I guess I put it on the thumbnail as well, in terms of I will not adapt with Daniel Farke. And he said, he's not going to effectively, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said that he's not going to just be pressured to make certain changes, which for me maybe looked at the fact that lots of fans right now are crying out for Yakabil. Is Yakabil going to absolutely solve all of Leeds United's problems? Which, I think Leeds have had a relatively good start to the season, but that was a hammer blow at the weekend. That was a very, very bad game for Leeds, outcome-wise. And just, the performance, I thought, to a certain level, the sloppiness, the lack of engagement, the soft goals that were given away, the lack of real potency with the amount of dominance we had on the ball. And I thought Burnley played the game well. They let us have the ball in the second half, and that was that. But yeah, when Farke's coming out and saying that, and then you've seen Yakabil on the bench, who's not featured really in 8 games, that I think has to change. You've got Tanaka on the bench. These two can make a difference. They both can make a difference systematically as well. And if you go to a back 3, you can collapse into a back 5 against a lot of these Premier League sides. If you don't want to do that, you can play with a back 3. That's what you can do. You don't have to collapse into a 5. But I just feel like methodically, if we've got no wingers, you need to move to maybe Bogle and Goodmanson just applying the trade on that left-hand side, and maybe the front 2 splitting themselves at points to aid those 2 out wide as well. And, having certain sequences and then, spinning off and getting into the box. But you can put Peru in that number 10, maybe just in and off Metcher and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, or you can play them both together. But hopefully we're looking at a scenario where Okafor's going to be back. Obviously, when you are looking at Noah Okafor, he is our most potent player at this moment in time. It feels like he's improving game on game on game, which is great to see from him. If we do have one of the wingers back, it makes maybe the 4-2-3-1, the 4-3-3, which, guys, I said it on this match action, basically the same formation, to really change systematically and leave a different imprint on a game, you have to go to a back 3. You have to go to a back 3 for something a little bit different. And when your strength is in recruitment is defense, which you brought in, When you look at Anton Stack, when you look at Jakob, when you look at whoever you might want to talk about, keeping older players as well, Stroud, you can go to a back three and you can be difficult to beat. Thomas Frank's shown that with Brentford, and being pragmatic with different systematic, variances, in your play. So, but I think going into the West Ham game, it's going to be a lot harder. A Nuno system is going to be very difficult, but Leeds do have Ellen Road as the back in right now, and Leeds fans will be the 12th man, as they always are. But I just thought it was quite poignant right now to read some of the fans' comments on my videos and read some of the fans' comments, what you guys are putting in this morning as well. I think it's really important. It is 100% not Farke's fault that fans are left guessing which Leeds team are going to show up on match days. That's squarely on the players. I think that's important, Tao, as well. I think, that's poor. I do think there's got to be an accountability to the players as well. You've kind of got to look at them and think, well, guys, you can work things out on the pitch. I mentioned at the weekend when it comes to Roy Keane said this in Sky Sports punditry a couple of times. On the pitch when we were playing out there, and let's say, Ferguson wanted them to do something different, you'd work it out. If you were to go to a little bit of a low block and you needed to go to a low block, you'd work it out. You can figure things out on the pitch yourself as well. And Daniel Farke can't get onto the pitch and, start playing, great long spraying passes, but he can encourage that from a systematic perspective, which I don't think he does. But the sloppiness of the passing at the weekend, especially in the first half, just wasn't good enough. It was just poor, really poor, Daniel Farke can't do anything about Jack Harrison be 2v1 with Kyle Walker out there and Walker putting the ball into the box and Ugochukwu just been there by himself. He can't do anything about that. There's accountability, but what Farke can do is change systems. He's the captain of the ship, And the big thing is as well, recruitment happened, of which we know, but Farke had a big say in recruitment, which he's admitted himself as well. So he wanted more players, but of the players that he got, presumably, like he said with Beale, like he said with Stat, like he said with Goodmanson, when he was talking about them when we signed them, he was very happy with them. So he'd have had a say. And we know that he has a say in recruitment as well. So it is quite confusing with the whole Jakob thing. And I think there's opportunities right now, which is good. James is going to be back, albeit, Dan hasn't really proved himself, in my opinion, at Premier League level yet. Dan being back, hopefully Nonto's not far away. Okafor being back means that the 4-3-3 is a little bit more palatable at home as well. The 4-3-3 against West Ham could work, and I think it will work with wingers. I think you've got to put Tanaka in there. Has to be back in this squad for me. But what we have to take a reading on right now when it comes to Leeds United is this different systematic approach and different ways of Daniel Farke adapting to different Premier League games. It cannot just be a 4-3-3 and as predictable as what it was at the weekend. Even when we have all the players back, it's got to be unpredictable to a certain extent. You don't have to play every single player in every single game. Right, okay. Pellegrini says, I think the fact that Farke is such a regular topic of discussion speaks volumes. Only Harrison, Aronson, and Melee have occupied more airtime. Daniel Cunningham says, perfect opportunity to go to a back three at the weekend. Our fullbacks are perfect for this system. Imagine not being Leeds. Says, hey, pal, how's it going, mate? Let's have a look. Pinned all their hopes on Calvert-Lewin getting the goals to stay up on the board. The board are deluded and let us all down. Yeah, like I said, I know, like, for example, in the space, there's a lot of content creators and there's a lot of people on the YouTube the sphere as well, and on the social side of things. I don't watch that much YouTube, I'll be honest with you. I'm big into MMA, and I'll watch a lot of MMA YouTube, but I don't actually watch football on YouTube that much, so I can't gather the opinion of the masses. But I do see the tone and understanding of it in my comment section, which we're going to flag up in a second, and on social media. But I can't profess to be watching loads of people on YouTube. It just doesn't happen. So I can't get the gauge for it, but it does feel like I don't want to get into this section again when it comes to us as fans of the blame game. Oh, it's so-and-so, it's so-and-so. There is a collective problem here. The recruitment's not been good enough. I don't think it's as bad as what people are saying. I think there's been maybe a little bit of lacking up top when it comes to that investment. I do think that, but I think overall, as I've mentioned there, Farke having a hand in recruitment as well. I think when you look at the caliber of players we brought in, I thought they were decent. I think they were decent, but I do think we missed parts going forward 100%. But I do think there was ways that you beat Burnley, and you've got more than a good enough side to beat Burnley. You know, systematic differences can happen. People can come off the bench. You can change things at half time, and he's just not a good in-game manager overall, from my opinion. He's not a good in-game manager, and it can't be this predictable going forward. I've got to be surprised at some point by your selections, because that's then going to put the opponent manager and the opponent side, analysts, whatever, on the back foot as well, and that's what can breed success as well. Unpredictability. Let's have a look. Chris Allen says Harrison and Aronson been at the club as a failure from top to bottom. DCL needs goals around him. Not going to get that with Brendy and Harrison. Agreed. MW says worry that Tanaka will want out if he doesn't get his minutes. I think that's something that you're definitely going to see from Beal. Definitely. This is a guy who is one of the best, or was one of the best defensive players really in Europe when you look at the metrics of just clearances and defending his own box. There was a lot of clubs in for him as well. You bear in mind that when we got Beal, there was a last minute approach from Newcastle. Do you remember that? And it was official. It was a last minute approach right at the very end, but everything had happened with Leeds at that point, which was great. But he even said in his post-match interview that his post-signing interview that there was other clubs interested. So he'll know that he's got value at the top level. He's got value at the top level anyway, because he's been playing for Udinese in Serie A. But it is all about utilising your bench. It's all about utilising differences in there. And I think there are solutions for West Ham. And hopefully Okafor is going to be back. And hopefully we're going to see a few more back in proceedings as well. Right, let's get into a couple of the comments as well, guys, that I wanted to flag up from the YouTube video that I made the other day. I think this was from Ups and Downs that we did yesterday. So let's just flag this on screen now. So Ian says Farke's refusal to adapt will get him fired soon enough, hopefully. I'm not there yet. With Farke. I think there's a worrying pattern with Daniel Farke. I think there is. And I think I still have the same worries that I've always had with Farke. However, has he been hamstrung a little bit by the board? Yes. But games like what we've seen at the weekend isn't going to be a fine viewing for him. It's not, and Ian's right. And there are people who are definitely Farke out right now. But that's always been the case, hasn't it? It's always been the case. But yeah, and there has been a little bit of a failing as well from the 49ers that they didn't fully back him after kind of leaking to Mike Keegan at the Daily Mail that, they're thinking about sacking him. And then they completely bottled it. Let's be honest. They completely bottled it when they saw the fan reaction to that, which from an ownership standpoint really shouldn't be how you make decisions. And that's definitely of an ownership strand that we've seen before at Leeds United. You were kind of hoping that maybe the Niners would be stronger in that effect. And that's not to say I wanted Farke sacked, but it is to say that, just putting a little bit of a feeler out to the fans and maybe being put off by the reaction, I think is kind of weak, to be honest with you. Let's have a look. The owners have reaped what they've sowed. I think our current firepower if they think our current firepower was enough to keep us up, they're living in cuckoo land. I don't think that's a poor comment as well. I was having a look at that yesterday, and you kind of look at the forward line in particular, and you look at Okafor, and you look at Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Mecha. There's no real proof there, is there? There's no real proof. Daniel James, no real proof there that these players are going to consistently do it in the Premier League and are durable, really. Definitely Dan James, of which we've seen the evidence, but durability is a big thing. Nonto to a certain extent, even though I think he would improve Leeds right now. And I want to see Nonto, I want to see DCL, I want to see Okafor, and I feel that'll be much more profitable for Leeds United, you'd hope. It still is weak at Premier League level. That recruitment up top and those players up top that are available right now is weak still. And you do kind of have to watch the Premier League campaign and watch where we are and how we're performing to be able to make that judgment as well. You can make a judgment previously and say, no, I think it is. But then you see the Premier League games going down, and you think to yourself, actually, no, I'm not sure it is. I'm not sure it is a strong sort of level of a front line. And we've not seen Okafor, Nonto and DCL yet for 90 minutes, which is definitely our most effective. Will Farke change to that? Or is it going to be a pursual with Brendan Aronson? Is that what's going to happen? Is there going to be a focus on Jack Harrison? Because we know he loves him. So I don't know. I don't know what's in his head, but I do think there is a bit of a pattern with Farke. But I do also think that when you're looking at these fan comments, I think it is quite right to say that the owners have had a shocker. When it comes to that forward line. Shout out to Derek. That was a lovely comment as well. JBL says, I wouldn't lose any sleep if Farke was sacked in the morning. I agree the board is at fault, but so is Farke. His selections and tactics are dreadful at times. Leeds will go down if we don't strengthen in January, and Farke is still manager. I think as well, when you look at the fixtures coming up, everyone, and we've mentioned this already, when you are looking at Leeds United's next two, you kind of look at that November period, and it's really worrying. It's a really worrying period up really until January 7th. I was looking this morning, and Leeds have got Sunderland in there away from home that they've obviously got to be targeting. It's another game away from home against a newly promoted side. But Leeds have also got in there, these three that we've got coming up where we really have to get points. Leeds have to get points in these three. And it's not like we won't be able to maybe get points up against Crystal Palace at home, or it's not like we won't be able to get, points against Newcastle away or Man United. It's not. But I kind of earmarked up to January 7th. There's a few games in there of which you kind of think, okay, we'll be able to nick something there. Sunderland, your Palace at home, maybe, but Palace have got a lot better since we were last battling with them in the Premier League, obviously. And then you've got your Brighton, which is going to be tough, but still, maybe you target Brighton. I would never target Brighton, but if you can get a point there, brilliant. Forest, going to be tough, but still every Premier League game is tough, but that it just absolutely piles the pressure on West Ham, and this is why I was so frustrated at the weekend with Farke and with the players, because in that game in particular, we had enough bodies on the pitch to get a result, and we didn't get a result. You have to get a result against Burnley, and you can't let if you're not to win, just don't lose. Just don't lose, and then we can clog up 4 points in 6 if we beat West Ham at home. It's not a bad return. It's a pretty decent return. Now we're going into West Ham, and if you'd have asked me beforehand, 3 points out of 6, if it Burnley and West Ham, I'd have been like, no, minimum's 4 points with the games that we've got coming up. But overall, I think when you look at it, the pressure is massively piled up. It's very, very big now. It feels on West Ham United. Leeds need a result. So yeah, interesting to see some of these comments as well. His tactics are dreadful at times. Leeds will go down if we don't strengthen. January's huge as well, and this is another bit of the comment section as well. Recruitment has been dire. We spent 15 on Beal to sit and rot on the bench, 5 on ball now to never feature. That's 15 million for the bench. Sunderland spent 18 million on Aldrete and Michele. Combined 8-10 on James Justin. 8-10 million on James Justin. What are we doing? I was excited by Stack. He's played well in 2 or 3 of our 8 games. Strikers don't score goals, almost no depth. I mean, Jesus. Sunderland fan again. A nice comment there as well. Between Leeds and Rangers, the Niners are looking like a fish out of water at this point. Yeah, I mean, when you kind of look at the Niners, I wouldn't focus too much on Rangers because it is obviously Parag. I think there is VP, isn't he? And obviously at Leeds, he is the president of the club, if you to look at it from that prism. Fletcher says, as much as we can blame the board, ultimately the blame lies with Farke. He has the final say in recruitment. He doesn't have any in-game strategies, so predictable that other coaches and managers know how to play him. Finally, too stubborn and thin-skinned. Any criticism, and he will take retribution. Look at Cresswell, Spence, Schmidt, Joseph, Ramazani. I suppose it's because others are saying that we should play Beal and Tanaka that hits his ego. Yeah, and maybe there is something in that. Maybe there is something in the fact that he's not a fan of effectively people questioning him. And maybe that's that. But he's got the opportunity right now to change it. And we get a win against West Ham. And kind of the feeling of the place changes. Leeds are on a point per game, but I don't really look at it like that. I don't really look at it like that, to be honest with you. I have done previously, and it's to kind of give you that level of copium, I guess. But also, I would have said Leeds were going to beat Burnley. I said Leeds were going to beat Burnley, even with the options that we had, because I thought there'd maybe be a little bit of an adaptability. We'd see Tanaka in there. Would we go to a back 3? Would I be surprised? Yeah, no. But the overarching point is, I thought we'd go to Burnley and win. Us losing at Burnley, I have to say, was a hammer blow. So it's not to say it's done or anything like that, but I think the points per game thing has to be taken into context right now because we've been beaten by Burnley. Do you know what I mean? So that was a fixture which I'd have looked at and I'd have said, right, we're going to be able to get something there when it comes to all 3 points and add to one of those 10 wins that we need before the end of the season. So, yeah, a lot of context around it, really, when we're thinking about it like that. But there's I think Leeds are in a position of which, you get your wingers back, you go into that game, and you've got to go to Forest and get something. You've got to go to Forest and get something now. For me as well, it can't just be, you know, you go to Forest, expect a loss, and then you lose against Brighton, and then it all starts to pile up in terms of those games. Daishin at Forest, yeah. December so brutal. We need to deliver soon. You ain't beating us at home. We've got 10, 12 points. I presume that's Sunderland. Who won MCC? Who of the standing would come in to take the manager's job given the squad? No one. People on here suggesting Iriola are living in cuckoo land. Why would he take a step backwards? I agree with that. Iriola's never going to come to Leeds United. John Charles says, hi, Connor. We can't blame Farke if our players can't hit the net. Hopefully, Okafor and Nonta will be back Friday, and we will give, and why not give Biol a start? I guess, John, that's the end of your comment is where you can blame Farke. You know, that is, and once again, I agree with you, mate. I think, you know, if you do get those two back and you have that 4-3-3, brilliant at home, and maybe we can utilize that at home. Why not we just shoot? Let's try and I keep saying this, but let's try and adapt maybe similarly to what Thomas Frank did, because I feel like we've replicated a lot of what Frank's principles was. He did a Sky Sports interview and basically told us the principles that Brentford recruited in, focused on. And I think Leeds, you're seeing some of that this season when it comes to recruitment and maybe a little bit of style. Why don't we adapt as well? Why don't we look at where our strengths are, which is the defensive positioning? And I know you have to score goals to stay up, of course, but maybe we can have a different system at home to what we have away from home. Maybe that can work, you know, but effectively Leeds aren't going to be going into many games with no wingers available, and Leeds' most potent players and the best probably technical players that we have on the pitch are our wingers when you're looking at maybe Okafor and maybe when you're looking at someone like Willie Gnonto. But I guess when you do look at the 49ers, you can look at them because we are looking at a period, and we said this at the end of the window, where the forward line is probably weaker than what it was in the Championship, and that's damning. That's not good. And when you've got a forward line, I mean, maybe with the greatest of respect, maybe kind of when you look at maybe like Brun Larsen and you look at Armando Broja and one other at Burnley, that's a poor starting 11. But when you're looking at Leeds United and you've got a front line of Aronson, Harrison, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, that is like as a three, it's an atrocious front three, and there were options to change that up. Still need to improve at set pieces. I would agree with that. Calypso Ross says, don't think Farke helps himself with his comment in his post-match press conference after Burnley. Makes himself look like a you-know-what. Yeah, and like I shoved on Twitter. I just went, shut up, mate, or something like that, because at some points he doesn't. I mean, he said after in the post-match press conference that Arsenal, Man City won't go and do that to Burnley. It's like, mate, you lost the game. We have eyes. You lost the game. And you were inept in that game. The players weren't great, but you have the ability as the manager, as the captain of the ship, to change that, you know? But once again, I do have to say this isn't just on Daniel Farke. It's not just on Daniel Farke. The players need to take accountability. They need to roll those sleeves up, and they need to get really their standards increased a little bit, because I thought barring Gabby Goodmanson, all of them were poor. I think Ansel Stack's been poor. I think Sean Longstaff was really poor at the weekend. I think, you know, when you're looking across the pitch and just our own standards in terms of what we see, even just most weeks in the Premier League, which I think has been good from certain individuals, it was below standard the weekend in a must-win game. So there's lots of variance that we can talk about here, really. Dan Ward says, I thought it last year in the Championship, but I still think it now that Scott Parker is technically more adept than Farke. Yeah, 100%. I think there's something there potentially as well. Farke never washes hair. Emmett says, someone told me Leicester had more points after 8 games last season than what we have now. That's worrying, really. Okay, interesting. Danielito says, we'll very quickly be under the point per game soon, given our fixtures between now and the end of the year. And that's kind of what I'm looking at, mate. That's kind of what I'm looking at when it comes to the whole points per game thing. I think we've just got to be quite careful looking at that now, because when we get into, and it's copium, I understand it, but when we kind of get into that November, December period now, it's that period of which we are going to be below that. So that's not going to be a metric that we're all looking at very, very soon. So yeah, I think that's going to go maybe a little bit sort of below the understanding. But that is worrying, Emma. I've not seen that one yet. Discussing the Hannibal situation. Yeah. Connor, would you take Kieran McKenna? Do you know what, Ross? I kind of don't want to. I do think with Farke, because, I mean, it was quite ironic actually about the thin-skinned comment just there about Daniel Farke, because there is a lot of thin-skinned people in the world as well. And doing this, I'm quite lucky. I've built up a bit of a thick skin because you have to, because there's some absolute twonks on the internet. But you've kind of, I think, got to be quite like, I respect Daniel Farke. I respect the job he's done for my football club ultimately, and he's not out the job. So right now, I kind of don't want to, and I think it's a real negative way of thinking, Ross, if I'm honest with you, and talking about managerial appointments. Because it's not going to happen right now. It's just not going to happen. They're not just going to sack Daniel Farke now. And B, as well, he's in a job. So I think it is quite disrespectful to just be turning around and looking at other managers and saying, oh, we should take him, we should take him, we should take him. I think the key thing, and I said this last year, and unfortunately, people cognitively can't get it through at some points. I know you guys are all very different in here, in my community, in my space, but people can't cognitively work it out on the other side of the coin that there is a grey area, right? There's a grey area. I don't want sackings at Leeds United. I don't want managers out. But I do want managers to adapt. And I'm not Daniel Farke FC. I'm a Leeds fan. And I think, unfortunately, we have maybe a portion in the fan base, which is fine, it is what it is, who are more bothered about Daniel Farke remaining in the job than it being to the better state of Leeds United, which is fine. It's subjective, but I completely disagree with that. I want what's best for Leeds United, ultimately. And I need Daniel Farke to deliver for then the result to be the betterment of Leeds United. So he has to, because he's never done it at Premier League level before. He's never been offered a Premier League job when he's been out of the Premier League. So you need to prove to me, to someone who is slightly skeptical about you, that you can do it across this campaign. Okay? Now, the context to be applied to that is the fact that he's just lost to Burnley, right? That is context. That is not a good result. Some other clubs would probably sack him off the back of that. Yeah, I'm not saying we should have done that, but some other clubs would have done that. But I also think that, as I said, he's not been helped. He's not been helped by the board. But overall, you had the players at your disposal to beat Burnley at the weekend, and you chose to go with the lineup at the start, and your in-game tactics were to a level of which wasn't Premier League standard when it came to managerial decisions and strategy. So yeah, that's got to change. But I ultimately want Daniel Farke to adapt. I want him to have a job at Leeds United. I want him to adapt. If he adapts, that is the best solution for all of us, because you want a manager in the job, because it builds up continuity. The players might have a certain relationship with him. There is a level of understanding between the top and Daniel Farke. He's had a hand in recruitment, which is off the back of that. You effectively need Daniel Farke to be in the job, but you need him to adapt as well. And we need to start seeing some of these stubborn traits sort of be, pushed to the side a little bit. We need to see Tanaka in there. Could we see Biol in there at points? Otherwise, what is it? Why have we brought him in? Why have we brought him in? He'll be getting narked off. He'll be talking to his agent, thinking, "Look, if I'm poor, fair enough, I'm poor, but they brought me in for this amount of money. They are shipping goals now, and I'm still not been brought in. And I don't think Biol is going to be literally the be-all and end-all. I don't think that's going to happen." But you've got players on the bench who can make a difference there. You've got Premier League players off that bench that can come into the side and improve things. Tanaka, in my opinion, I've said that I've kind of always said this, is the best midfielder in my opinion we've got. Biol, from what we understand, is a very good defender. It's not bad positions to be invested in off the bench, is it? Let's have a look. Change. I can't understand. Fans complaining about lack of adaptation, late subs, wrong formations, players not been able to stay in its post. It's one or the other, isn't it? Yeah. Ross says need to sign proven finishers in January. Whether that is agreed, 100%. Graham says, come on, Conor Farke and adapting don't go together. Stubbornness, yes. Anything or akin to the meaning of the word is alien to him. Conor, he ain't adapting. That's the issue. West Ham is massive for Farke. It does feel like that, because I feel like obviously West Ham are playing tonight and then they're playing again on Friday. It's a narrow window. They've obviously got travel encompassed with that as well. Leeds have had a longer resting period. We've got players who are coming back as well. But if we were to go into the West Ham game and lose, like let's say heavily, that might sort of get this sort of level of conversation in the boardroom pretty high, maybe. I don't know. JC says Farke has adapted since last term, so he can do it. I think he picked a team on Saturday that he felt could win. And it should have really, we dominated all stats, but didn't take our chances. Well, I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did, Jay, in terms of picking a team that he thought could win. I do believe that. I don't think he's going into games thinking that he could lose, but I think it's just the proactiveness of him in game. But what I will say about him is going into this West Ham game, he'll have more at his disposal, which is popular. Which is popular with Leeds fans also. But I guess what we have to bear in mind, and this is giving Farke some credit, right? This is giving Farke a little bit of credit. He has imprinted a 4-3-3 this year. Yeah, last year was a 4-2-3-1, and I do think they're invariably similar formations, but we have adapted. We brought personnel in that you're now seeing Ethan Ampadu on the long throws all the time. You're seeing. I think there has been a little bit more focus on set pieces. I do believe that. I know a lot of you will disagree with that, but I do think there's been a little bit more focus on that. So I do think he has adapted. I do think Farke has adapted. It's just I think you've got to adapt to a certain level of which is maybe a little bit greater than what he's doing right now. West Ham is a huge game for Leeds. Anthony says, he's already adapted. He's already adapted, introduced a new system with the new players he's got this year. I think it's his in-game decisions which have been pretty poor overall. Yeah, potentially, mate. Potentially. Matthew said was on the same flight as Beale on the international break. He did not seem happy. Yeah, and I just wanted to do this to get the I don't think it's right now to be talking about, kind of things that are not on the weekend still. I think you guys are still knocked off at it. I'm getting a vibe. There's a lot of you in this morning as well. We just wanted to do this impromptu as well. There's a lot of you in here this morning. And I think it's pretty obvious that people are knocked off. So we wanted to just get in that this morning, just have a little bit of a chat as well. The Monday musings, I think, is important. Pat says, would 16th or 17th be acceptable this season? Of course it could. Of course it could. But that West Ham game is huge. But it's guys, listen, it's Friday. We're getting right back into it, aren't we? I know. It's not as ideal as the Championship. So we're right back into it, aren't we? The thick of it, which is what Leeds need after a loss. Brett says, what do you mean in game decisions? The squad is picked of the players don't play. If the players don't play, then that's on them, not him. Well, no, well, technically, Brett, he's picking a team and they have to go out there and they have to win the football match, Brett. But what I'll say, mate, is in-game decisions, substitutions, tactical adaptation in-game is big. Weekend, I think a classic example would be on the 45th minute. I didn't think there was a lot of composure in the midfield. I thought it was sloppy in the midfield. There was no real tempo in the midfield. You've got a Japanese international on the bench who is probably our best player. Why don't you bring him on and put him in the midfield when you can see us losing control in the middle? Ugachukwu and Florentino Luis, in my opinion, got the better of our midfield at the weekend. So why wouldn't you bring on Al Tanaka when you see in the game going that certain way? That's an in-game decision that could impact. Going two up top is an in-game decision that could impact. And we did that just far too late. And Al Tanaka came on the 81st minute, which I just don't think is great in game. I don't think it's given him enough time to really be able to get used to the level. Well, Emmett, that's slightly worrying, mate. That is slightly worrying. Right, okay. Well, guys, we'll leave it there anyway. We've been rambling on for a little bit. Please like the video. If you want, listen, get your comments in the section below. So we're going to start doing this. We're going to start doing this because I want to get a feel of what you guys are thinking. We're going to be taking screenshots of the comment section and putting it on screen. We'll probably do like this quite regularly when it comes to the Monday musings, because I don't think you guys are really over it on Mondays yet. And I think that's important to stress because I'm not either. And I think we need to natter about it. There's a lot of you in the comment section below. We've had 600 of you in here. So make sure you're slapping a like on the video, guys. Really appreciate all your support. We will be back obviously tomorrow morning. Then we'll have white noise. I'm sure a very interesting white noise with Brownie. So I know you guys like the variance when it comes to that. So as I say, Leeds coming up against West Ham on Friday night. So it's a quicker turnaround this week, which is good. We need to get back into that. But yeah, look, there are solutions there. Hopefully there are injuries coming back. Let's hope Farke adapts and learns a little bit. And yeah, the 49ers do something in January. Big period for Leeds United.